Because when the jungle screams, it's through him. The roar of me words to climb before I could walk, wolves my brothers took to belong. Those haunting words open the discussion of Tarzan 2026, and they perfectly capture the heartbeat of this modern cinematic revival, a story where man, nature, and memory collide. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. The Return of the Jungle Legend. Tarzan 2026. In the heart of cinematic adventure, few characters have stood the test of time quite like Tarzan. The legendary man of the jungle, raised by apes and torn between two worlds, returns once again to the big screen in a reimagined epic that redefines what it means to be human. This upcoming adaptation, described by critics and industry insiders as one of the boldest reinterpretations of the 21st century, is far more than just another action film. Tarzan 2026 brings new life to the timeless story with a deeply emotional, action-packed, and visually breathtaking experience that captures both the savagery and the beauty of the untamed wilderness. Set to be one of the most ambitious live-action adventures of the decade, the film takes audiences deep into the wild, not as passive observers, but as witnesses to a world where nature's law reigns supreme. It's a world where one man must rediscover his identity amidst the chaos of civilization and the primal forces that raised him. This new adaptation of Tarzan is not merely a retelling of Edgar Rice Burroughs' original tale. It is, as the filmmakers describe, a complete reawakening. The 2026 version blends modern storytelling with raw emotion, high-stakes action, and a profound exploration of human nature. A vision both primal and poetic. The filmmakers behind Tarzan 2026 have built a world that feels both primal and poetic, one that reminds viewers that beneath the layers of progress, technology, and urban civilization, humanity is still tied to the ancient rhythms of the earth. The movie promises an experience filled with roaring jungles, thunderous battles, heart-stopping chases, and an emotional journey that tests the limits of strength, love, and destiny. At its center stands Tarzan himself, portrayed by rising Hollywood star Alexander Ludwig, known for his commanding physical presence and emotional intensity. Ludwig's interpretation of Tarzan, according to early production reports, is astonishingly authentic. He embodies both the raw power and the vulnerability of a man who belongs to two worlds, the wild and the modern. His Tarzan is not just a hero, he's a living contradiction, a bridge between civilization's light and nature's shadow. The Faces of the Wild. Alongside him is Ana de Armas as Jane Porter, a fearless explorer and humanitarian. Unlike older portrayals that confined Jane to a secondary role, this version presents her as an equal, a brilliant, compassionate force who challenges Tarzan's perception of civilization and reawakens his sense of belonging. Their chemistry reportedly burns with tension and empathy, driving much of the film's emotional core. Each scene between them is said to balance raw passion with quiet reflection, two souls searching for their place in a divided world. The supporting cast brings further gravitas to the project. Idris Elba appears as Chief Mbala, the wise and formidable leader of a remote African tribe caught between defending their ancestral home and navigating the harsh realities of foreign encroachment. Javier Bardem steps into the role of Alaric Voss, a ruthless industrialist whose hunger for power and resources threatens not only the jungle but the balance of life itself. Florence Pugh joins as Emily Graves, an idealistic environmentalist fighting to expose the exploitation of Africa's ecosystems. And Jimin Hoon-soo lends his commanding presence as the spiritual guide and mentor who helps Tarzan confront his deepest fears. Together, this ensemble forms a tapestry of complex human emotion, each character reflecting a different aspect of humanity's relationship with nature: greed, wisdom, empathy, and survival. The story, Return to the Wild. The story begins years after Tarzan has left the jungle behind. Now living in London under his birth name, John Clayton III, he serves as an ambassador and philanthropist, striving to bridge humanity and nature through his influence. But the peace of civilized life feels hollow. Deep down, Tarzan carries the weight of displacement. The city's noise, its greed, and its endless hunger have dulled the instincts that once defined him. When reports surface of illegal mining operations devastating the Congo basin and enslaving local tribes, something inside him stirs. It's the old call of the wild, the pulse of the jungle that never truly left his heart. Against the advice of his peers, he decides to return to Africa with Jane, determined to expose the truth and protect the land that gave him life. Upon his return, the jungle greets him with a mix of familiarity and hostility. The animals he once knew, the trees that once sheltered him now stand scarred by machines and fire. The land of his youth has become a battleground between corporate invaders and tribal guardians. Haunted by memories of his ape mother, Kala, and the ghostly echoes of his animal family, Tarzan begins to question his identity. Has he become too human to belong to the jungle, or too wild to belong to the city? But when Jane is captured by mercenaries under Alaric Voss's command, Tarzan is forced to awaken the beast within once more. The jungle calls his name not as a man, but as a legend reborn. Themes: nature, identity, and redemption. The film's plot is as much about personal rediscovery as it is about environmental warfare. As Tarzan battles Voss's mercenaries, he must also confront the ghosts of his past, the pain of losing Kala, the betrayal of man against nature, and the fear that he may never fit into either world. With the guidance of Chief Mbala and his tribe, Tarzan leads a rebellion that unites man and beast in a desperate fight to preserve the last untouched sanctuary of the wild. What follows, according to early production notes, is a breathtaking sequence of events from treetop pursuits to colossal showdowns amid stampeding herds and collapsing rivers. The jungle itself becomes a living, breathing character, roaring in fury as nature fights back against human greed. The cinematography of Tarzan 2026 is reportedly one of its greatest triumphs. Every frame captures the pulse of the wilderness, sunlight breaking through the canopy, mist curling around waterfalls, and the symphony of distant animal calls echoing through the night. Filmed on location in real African jungles and enhanced with cutting-edge digital effects, the movie strives for authenticity rather than fantasy. The dirt, the sweat, the blood, it's all tangible. The director's vision. At the helm of the film is director James Mangold, known for emotionally charged, character-driven storytelling, Logan, Ford v Ferrari. His approach to Tarzan 2026 is said to fuse human emotion with primal spectacle. Mangold described his vision in a recent interview. Tarzan is not just about swinging through trees. It's about what happens when the human spirit meets nature at its purest, when survival becomes philosophy. Under his direction, Tarzan 2026 becomes more than an adventure film, it becomes an exploration of the human condition. The first half of the movie focuses on Tarzan's conflict with identity, showing his struggle to balance the two halves of his soul. The latter half erupts into full-scale warfare, a symbolic clash between civilization's greed and nature's fury. When the jungle calls, there is no silence strong enough to drown it. Tarzan hears it again, the heartbeat of the land, pulsing through roots, leaves, and wind. What began as a man's return to his homeland now becomes a war for the soul of the earth itself. The awakening of the beast. As Alaric Voss's mining operations expand, destroying sacred land and poisoning rivers, the jungle begins to wither. Trees fall like dying giants. Herds scatter in panic. The ground shakes with explosions, and the skies turn to ash. Amid this chaos, Tarzan rises not as a man in a suit, not as John Clayton, but as the creature he was always meant to be. Stripped of the comforts of civilization, he paints himself in the mud and blood of the earth, his muscles marked with scars of survival. His eyes burn with purpose. The rhythm of the jungle flows through his veins. He calls to the animals not as master, but as brother. The gorillas remember. The elephants remember. Even the birds echo his cry through the canopy. It is the moment when legend ceases to be story and becomes reality. As the battle lines are drawn, the tribes unite under Chief Mbala, guided by Jane's intelligence and Tarzan's instinct. They craft traps using vines and fire, combining ancient knowledge with Jane's strategic brilliance. The jungle prepares for war. The war for the wild. The war begins at dawn. The camera pans across mist-covered valleys and thundering waterfalls as drums echo in the distance. The soundtrack, a mix of tribal percussion and orchestral crescendos, swells as Tarzan charges into battle. With every swing of his vine, the camera follows in breathtaking fluid motion, capturing the rush of speed, gravity, and rage. The choreography is brutal and graceful, almost like a dance between man and nature. Mercenaries in armored vehicles plow through the forest, firing flamethrowers and cutting down everything in sight. But nature strikes back. Elephants charge through their lines, gorillas ambush from above, and the jungle itself becomes a weapon, branches, roots, and animals fighting as one living organism. Tarzan confronts Voss in the heart of the burning jungle. The two stand face to face on a collapsing bridge above a raging river. "You can't stop progress," Voss snarls. "You call this progress?" Tarzan growls back, his voice half human, half beast. "You've forgotten what life really is." Their fight is raw, desperate, and symbolic, the embodiment of civilization's arrogance versus nature's endurance. When the bridge collapses, Tarzan barely survives. Voss, however, falls into the flames, consumed by the destruction he created. The jungle falls silent. Smoke rises over the valley. The emotional heart, love and loss. Amid the ruins, Jane finds Tarzan wounded but alive. Their reunion is quiet, no grand speeches, just two souls recognizing each other in the ashes of battle. She whispers, "You saved them all." Tarzan replies, "They saved me." This exchange captures the movie's entire essence, the bond between man and the world he forgot. Later, as rain washes away the soot and blood, Tarzan stands alone beneath the same tree where he was once raised by Kala. He closes his eyes and hears her voice, soft, maternal, eternal. "The jungle never leaves you, my son. You were never lost. You were only becoming." It's one of the film's most emotional moments, a blend of memory, forgiveness, and rebirth. The final message, the balance restored. The film ends not with an explosion or a triumphant roar, but with calm. Nature heals itself. The rivers run clean again. The animals return. Villages rebuild with respect for the land. Tarzan and Jane choose to stay in Africa, dedicating their lives to protecting the balance between humanity and the wild. In the closing scene, a young child, a villager, watches Tarzan swing through the trees. His eyes light up with awe. The camera zooms out as Tarzan's silhouette crosses the golden horizon, his iconic yell echoing across the valley. The jungle answers. Fade to black. Behind the scenes, the making of a modern myth. The making of Tarzan 2026 was as ambitious as the story itself. Filming took place in real African rainforests, stretching across Kenya, Ghana, and parts of Madagascar. The production team faced unpredictable weather, dangerous wildlife, and remote locations. Yet, according to interviews, the filmmakers insisted that authenticity was worth the challenge. No major green screens were used for the jungle scenes. Instead, the actors performed amid real trees, mud, and humidity. "We wanted the audience to feel the jungle, not just see it," said director James Mangold. Alexander Ludwig underwent 6 months of intensive physical training, climbing, swimming, and surviving in simulated wild environments. His movements as Tarzan were choreographed not just for action, but to mirror the instincts of a predator and protector. Ana de Armas learned wilderness survival skills, animal behavior patterns, and even basic sign communication used by tribes in the Congo region. The result is a film where every gesture feels earned, every emotion grounded. The music of the wild. The soundtrack of Tarzan 2026, composed by Hans Zimmer, is a masterpiece of rhythm and emotion. Zimmer, known for his sweeping, powerful scores, approached this project with raw simplicity. He incorporated native African drums, vocal chants, and organic sounds, rustling leaves, water streams, heartbeats, blending them with symphonic grandeur. Each track carries emotional weight. From the quiet hum of dawn to the thunderous roar of battle, the music mirrors Tarzan's transformation from man to myth. One track, titled Roots Remember, plays during the final scene. It begins with a lone drumbeat, then slowly builds into a harmony of voices and strings symbolizing the unity between nature and humanity. It's haunting, beautiful, and unforgettable. Symbolism and deeper meaning. Beyond its action and spectacle, Tarzan 2026 is layered with meaning. It's about the cost of forgetting where we come from. About how humanity's obsession with progress often blinds it to the destruction it causes. Tarzan's journey mirrors our own a return to what truly matters. The film reminds us that civilization is not defined by buildings and machines, but by balance, compassion, and respect for life. Even Voss, the villain, is portrayed with nuance. His greed stems from fear of insignificance in a world he cannot control. His downfall is tragic not because he's evil, but because he represents humanity's deepest flaw, the urge to dominate rather than coexist. Cinematography, the language of nature. Shot by acclaimed cinematographer Roger Deakins, every frame of Tarzan 2026 tells a story. From the golden light filtering through misty canopies to the harsh contrast of fire against rain, the visuals capture both the beauty and brutality of the jungle. Deakins used long tracking shots to simulate the fluid motion of Tarzan's world. Swinging vines, leaping animals, and flowing rivers all blend seamlessly. The camera often shifts perspective from Tarzan's human eyes to the gaze of animals, showing that in nature, all life is connected. This visual poetry turns the film into something beyond entertainment, an immersive experience that feels almost spiritual. Critical reception and early buzz. Even before its release, Tarzan 2026 has been hailed as one of the most anticipated films of the decade. Early screenings at major festivals reportedly received standing ovations. Critics praised its balance of emotion, spectacle, and environmental message. One reviewer described it as the first Tarzan film that feels truly alive, brutal, beautiful, and deeply human. The performances, especially by Ludwig and de Armas, were highlighted for their sincerity. Viewers reportedly left theaters in tears not because of sadness, but because of the raw reminder of what humanity has lost. The legacy of Tarzan. Over a century since his first appearance in 1912, Tarzan remains one of fiction's most enduring heroes. But Tarzan 2026 is not just another retelling, it's a resurrection. It takes the myth we thought we knew and transforms it into a reflection of our times. It asks, what happens when man forgets the wild? Can nature forgive us? And what does it truly mean to belong? The film doesn't give easy answers, instead, it invites reflection. Tarzan's roar at the end is not a cry of victory, but a promise that as long as the wild exists, humanity still has hope. Epilogue: the wild never dies. In the final narration, Tarzan's voice echoes softly. The jungle raised me. It taught me strength, pain, love, and loss. But above all, it taught me that the wild is not out there, it's within us. Every heartbeat, every breath, it belongs to the same rhythm. When the jungle screams, it's through me. Because I am the jungle. The screen fades to black, the music fades to a single heartbeat, and the credits roll. A legend reborn. In the dim glow of a misty jungle dawn, a shadow stirs, not just of a man, not merely of a beast, but of something far older, far deeper, a legend reborn. Tarzan 2026, directed by the visionary James Mangold, promises to redefine one of the most enduring characters in cinematic history. Set against the backdrop of a rapidly changing world, this reimagining plunges deep into the primal heart of nature, rediscovering what it truly means to belong to the wild, to the human race, and to oneself. The vision behind the vines. When Mangold, the director who reshaped cinematic icons with Logan and Ford v Ferrari, signed on for the new Tarzan, Hollywood paused. The jungle hero, half myth, half man, had been portrayed many times before, yet Mangold saw something others had missed. The story of survival was never about dominance, but about coexistence. He envisioned a film not of spectacle alone, but of soul. The jungle would not just be a setting, it would breathe, bleed, and speak. Every sound, every leaf trembling in the wind, every distant animal call would echo the pulse of its guardian Tarzan, a child of both man and beast, torn between two worlds. Casting the untamed. Early reports confirmed Alexander Skarsgård returning to the loincloth not as the flawless hero of myth, but as a scarred, introspective wanderer. Years after leaving civilization behind, his Tarzan is haunted by memories of fire, greed, and betrayal. The world has moved forward, but he remains trapped in time, bound by the rhythm of the wild. Beside him, Javier Bardem takes on the role of Bardem, a conflicted explorer whose fascination with the jungle masks a darker obsession. Bardem's commanding presence brings both menace and melancholy, a man who sees nature as something to conquer, not cherish. And then comes Anya Taylor-Joy, cast as Jane Porter, not the damsel history remembers, but a fierce, intellectual spirit, a scientist who seeks not to civilize Tarzan, but to understand him. Their relationship isn't one of rescue or romance alone, it's a philosophical bond, testing what it means to be human in a world that has forgotten its roots. A jungle transformed. Mangold's jungle is unlike any seen before on screen. Shot across Kenya's lush highlands, Thailand's dense rainforests, and the volcanic terrains of Iceland, the film uses natural lighting and practical effects to create an organic, tactile world. The director insisted that the audience feel the humidity, the grit, the heartbeat of every creature lurking in the undergrowth. Cinematographer Fedon Papamichael, Mangold's longtime collaborator, captures nature not as paradise, but as truth, unpredictable, raw, and endlessly alive. Drone shots glide over waterfalls as mist dances through the canopy, while close-up sequences capture the twitch of muscle beneath animal skin, a visual symphony of survival. Sound design plays an equally vital role. The roars, the whispers, the rhythmic pounding of distant drums merge with the score composed by Hans Zimmer, whose haunting melodies bridge the divide between the wild and the human. Zimmer's music doesn't just accompany Tarzan, it breathes with him. The man who speaks for the wild. At its heart, Tarzan 2026 explores identity. Mangold's script reimagines the jungle hero not as an action figure, but as a reflection of the human condition, a being who speaks for those who cannot. In this version, Tarzan has turned his back on civilization after witnessing the exploitation of his homeland. Years later, when a global corporation returns to ravage the forests for rare minerals, he must confront not only the invaders but his own fractured sense of belonging. This conflict between progress and preservation, civilization and instinct defines the movie's soul. Tarzan becomes a metaphor for the earth itself, wounded, resilient, and forever caught between chaos and creation. A modern myth for a modern world. Mangold has often said that every generation deserves its own version of Tarzan, not a repetition of Edgar Rice Burroughs' creation, but a reinterpretation that speaks to the anxieties of its time. In an age of environmental collapse and disconnection from nature, Tarzan 2026 stands as both warning and elegy. "We've forgotten how to listen," Mangold said in an early interview. Tarzan isn't just a man raised by animals, he's a bridge. He reminds us that we were once wild, and that maybe the wild never left us. This theme runs through every frame. Jane's expedition seeks knowledge, Bardem's character seeks control, and Tarzan seeks peace, but the jungle has its own will. It's no longer a passive landscape, it's an ancient consciousness, watching, waiting, and deciding who belongs. Every frame of Tarzan 2026 is designed to feel alive, not painted, not staged, but breathed into existence. Mangold's creative team spent months designing a jungle that is not simply a backdrop but a living, evolving entity, part dream, part nightmare. The language of the jungle. Production designer Nathan Crowley, known for his work on The Dark Knight and Interstellar, described the process as building a living cathedral. No synthetic greens or studio-painted vines, every texture came from nature. The team recreated habitats based on authentic African and Southeast Asian ecosystems, blending species of trees, insects, and flora that could coexist in cinematic harmony. They didn't just build a jungle, they gave it memory. Each area Tarzan traverses holds traces of past life carvings, bones, vines reclaiming old colonial ruins. It's a silent reminder that man's attempts to dominate nature always end the same way: the jungle takes it back. Crowley and Mangold even developed a symbolic language of the jungle. Colors evolve throughout the film. Greens become darker as the story progresses, and the palette deepens into shades of rust and amber, mirroring Tarzan's moral descent into conflict. The jungle mirrors Tarzan's mind, Mangold explains. When he is at peace, it feels infinite and calm. When he's at war, every leaf feels sharp enough to cut. The Beast and the Man. Alexander Skarsgård trained for 8 months before filming, combining parkour, combat choreography, and animal movement workshops led by biologists and tribal dancers. Mangold insisted that Skarsgård not act like Tarzan but become him, not through mimicry, but through instinct. In one sequence, Tarzan emerges from a lake at dawn, his body half covered in mud, his eyes reflecting the glow of a nearby wildfire. There's no dialogue, no music, just the quiet hum of insects and the faint echo of a lion's growl. It's a moment of pure storytelling, the man and the wild, indistinguishable. Skarsgård describes the role as his most emotionally exhausting. He's a man caught between worlds, he said. He's too human to live fully among beasts and too wild to ever belong to men. That's what breaks him and what makes him powerful. Jane reimagined. Anya Taylor-Joy's portrayal of Jane Porter redefines the archetype entirely. Gone is the naive explorer's daughter of earlier versions. This Jane is a biologist, linguist, and environmental activist whose fascination with the jungle runs deeper than science. Taylor-Joy brings a sense of quiet rebellion to the role. Jane isn't there to study Tarzan, she's there to understand him, to challenge the myth that separates civilization from wilderness. Her relationship with Tarzan becomes the film's emotional spine, two people drawn together not by romance alone, but by shared reverence for a world humanity has forgotten. In one scene, Jane watches Tarzan communicate with a herd of elephants. Their slow, thunderous movements fill the screen as the sun bleeds orange through the canopy. She whispers, "They don't fear him because he doesn't demand control." That line becomes a central truth of the movie: coexistence over dominance. The shadow of civilization. Bardem enters as the story's human antagonist, though villain feels too simple. He is a man who once admired Tarzan, perhaps even envied him, but years of greed and grief have twisted admiration into obsession. Bardem represents humanity's hunger not for food or survival, but for ownership. He leads a mercenary expedition, disguised as an environmental research mission, to exploit a newly discovered mineral vein deep in Tarzan's homeland. But the deeper he ventures, the more the jungle resists him. Vines grow thicker, animals grow restless, and the line between the living and the dead blurs. Mangold builds this conflict slowly, deliberately. The film's tension isn't built on battles, but on presence. Every rustle in the leaves, every shadow at the edge of firelight feels sentient, as though the jungle itself has become Tarzan's ally. Nature isn't just background noise here, Mangold notes. It's the oldest character in the story. The philosophy of wildness. What sets Tarzan 2026 apart from previous versions is its philosophical undercurrent. The story isn't simply man versus nature, it's man versus his own evolution. Tarzan stands as a living contradiction, proof that humanity's greatest strength is not domination, but empathy. Throughout the film, Tarzan refuses to kill unless absolutely necessary. His violence is instinctive, not cruel. His language, a mix of primal calls and fragmented English, reflects both regression and growth. He is civilization stripped bare, raw morality in its purest form. In several key sequences, Tarzan faces illusions of his past life. Through Mangold's dreamlike editing, we glimpse the ghosts of his human parents, the apes who raised him, and the colonizers who once tried to control him. Each vision poses the same question: can a man belong to two worlds without losing himself to either? Behind the camera, a testament to realism. To achieve authenticity, Mangold avoided over-reliance on CGI. Instead, he pushed the limits of practical filmmaking. Motion capture was reserved for a handful of sequences involving apes, led by choreographers from Planet of the Apes stunt team. Every major location was shot on site, often in near impossible terrain, deep valleys, cliff sides, and humid forests that tested the endurance of the crew. Cinematographer Papa Michael recalls, "We wanted audiences to feel the temperature, to sense the weight of humidity, the thickness of air, the closeness of breath. You can't fake that in a studio." Even the lighting obeyed realism. Torches flickered inconsistently, sunbeams filtered unpredictably through fog, and rain fell unplanned. Mangold encouraged improvisation, letting nature dictate the rhythm of filming. A legacy reforged. As production neared completion, whispers across Hollywood began to grow. Was Tarzan 2026 simply another adventure epic, or was it something deeper, a meditation on what humanity has become? Early test audiences were reportedly moved not just by the spectacle, but by its emotion. The film's tone, quiet, brutal, spiritual, evokes not just the jungle, but the soul of cinema itself. In an age of sequels and CGI extravagance, Tarzan 2026 feels handcrafted, an echo of a time when storytelling was about wonder, not algorithms. There comes a point in Tarzan 2026 where the jungle itself seems to hold its breath. The rains have stopped, the wind has fallen silent, and the air hangs heavy with the scent of smoke and fear. Tarzan stands at the edge of his homeland he once swore to protect, and watches as men, machines, and greed carve through the heart of the forest. This is where the film's emotional core beats loudest. It's no longer a tale of a man swinging between trees, it's about the fragile balance between creation and destruction, between what we take from the earth and what we give back. The fall and the fire. The story's turning point comes when Bardam's expedition sets the jungle ablaze to drive Tarzan out of hiding. The firestorm is both literal and symbolic, a purging of innocence, a test of faith. In one breathtaking sequence, flames ripple across the treetops, reflected in Tarzan's eyes. He charges into the inferno, not to fight, but to rescue the creatures that cannot flee: elephants, apes, birds, and beasts. Each movement is a cry against extinction, a visual hymn to compassion. Mangold captures the chaos with haunting stillness: the crackle of burning leaves, the desperate calls of animals, the glow of ash against moonlight. Hans Zimmer's score swells softly at first, then erupts into a chorus of primal drums, echoing Tarzan's heartbeat. This is not the heroism of legend, it is survival stripped of glory. Tarzan emerges scarred, exhausted, and changed. His connection to the jungle is no longer one of dominance, but of devotion. Jane's awakening. Amid the destruction, Jane experiences her own transformation. Once an observer of nature, she becomes its defender. Taylor-Joy brings quiet intensity to her arc, her calm intellect giving way to fierce empathy. She documents the devastation with trembling hands, realizing her research now bears witness to humanity's violence. In one intimate scene, she confronts Bardam. "You call it discovery. But what do you think the world becomes when there's nothing left to find?" Her words cut deeper than any weapon. For the first time, Bardam's character falters, revealing the cracks in his arrogance. Beneath his ambition lies guilt, the haunting memory of a son lost years before to a jungle illness. His crusade to tame nature was never about power, it was about revenge against what he could not control. This revelation humanizes the villain, turning Tarzan 2026 into something rare, a story where even destruction comes from grief. The return of the roar. As the final act unfolds, the jungle begins to fight back. Storms rise without warning, vines strangle machines, and animals rally around Tarzan as though answering an ancient call. The sequence, filmed with a mix of practical effects and minimal CGI, feels elemental, like watching nature reclaim its throne. Tarzan, bloodied but resolute, faces Bardam in a rain-soaked clearing. There are no speeches, no grand declarations, only silence, broken by thunder. Bardam raises his weapon, Tarzan lowers his. Mangold's direction turns the confrontation into a meditation on surrender. Tarzan does not kill his enemy. He simply steps aside, allowing the jungle to decide. Lightning strikes. A tree falls. Bardem disappears beneath the roots he once sought to destroy. The silence that follows is deafening, not of victory, but of loss. The dawn after destruction. When dawn breaks, the jungle is reborn. Smoke curls through shafts of sunlight, rain drips from the leaves, and life begins again. Tarzan walks among the ruins, animals gathering at his side, unafraid. Jane watches him from a distance, her journal now closed. She knows that to write about the wild is not enough, one must live by its laws. The two stand together at the edge of a waterfall. Jane asks quietly, "Will you come back with me?" Tarzan shakes his head. "This is where I began. This is where I belong." There is no kiss, no farewell, only understanding. The jungle hums around them, alive once more. A cinematic resurrection. Beyond its story, Tarzan 2026 stands as a creative resurrection, a statement about cinema itself. In an era dominated by digital landscapes, Mangold's film dares to return to the tactile. Every frame breathes with texture: rain on skin, dirt under nails, sweat in sunlight. Critics who previewed early screenings described the experience as visceral meditation. The pacing is deliberate, almost poetic, allowing silence to speak louder than dialogue. The film invites viewers not to consume the story, but to feel it pulse through them. Zimmer's score closes the film with a single haunting motif, a low hum that echoes Tarzan's jungle call, fading into the rustle of leaves. It's both an ending and a beginning, a reminder that nature's voice never truly dies, it only waits to be heard again. Themes of rebirth. At its core, Tarzan 2026 is about rediscovery of the self, of empathy, of the earth. It challenges the notion of progress as domination. Mangold asks, what if our greatest evolution lies not in conquering the wild, but in remembering we're part of it? The character of Tarzan becomes more than a man, he becomes a mirror for humanity's lost balance. His silence speaks of a truth we've long buried beneath noise and ambition. Even the film's marketing reflects this philosophy: minimalist posters showing only the silhouette of Tarzan beneath a canopy, the tagline, "The jungle remembers." Legacy and impact. Insiders suggest Tarzan 2026 could redefine the franchise the way The Dark Knight reshaped Batman, grounding myth in mortality. With its emphasis on realism, emotional depth, and environmental consciousness, the film is expected to resonate globally, especially among younger audiences awakening to the climate crisis. Mangold's vision of Tarzan is not a superhero, he's a symbol, a man who embodies the ancient truth that survival depends on harmony, not conquest. Film historians already call it the anti-blockbuster, a project that trades spectacle for sincerity. And yet, paradoxically, it is more visually arresting than any CGI spectacle could hope to be. From its cast's raw performances to its unfiltered natural cinematography, Tarzan 2026 stands as both a love letter and a warning, a reminder that the jungle may be far away, but the wild within us is closer than we think. When filming wrapped on Tarzan 2026, the set did not feel like an ending. It felt like a return, a quiet exhale after months of wrestling with mud, rain, heat, and emotion. For nearly a year, cast and crew had lived inside the jungle's rhythm. Every day began before dawn and ended long after the stars had risen, yet no one complained. They understood that what they were making was not just another movie. It was a statement, a reminder of what storytelling can still be when sincerity replaces spectacle. A brutal but beautiful journey. Filming in real jungles came with consequences. Crew members faced venomous insects, unpredictable floods, and isolation. Equipment corroded overnight from humidity. Generators failed mid-shoot, forcing Mangold to improvise lighting with torches and mirrors. Yet, every difficulty became part of the film's authenticity. If we were uncomfortable, Mangold said, we knew we were doing it right. Tarzan isn't a story you tell from an air-conditioned studio. It has to stain your skin. Alexander Skarsgård lost nearly 15 pounds during production. He often performed barefoot, moving silently through thorns and uneven terrain to preserve realism. The actor admitted that some days he forgot where performance ended and instinct began. When you stop hearing the city in your head, he said, you start hearing the jungle. That's when Tarzan arrives. Becoming Jane. For Anya Taylor-Joy, the role of Jane was equally transformative. To prepare, she studied field biologists and spent weeks shadowing environmental researchers in South America. She learned to identify animal tracks, build temporary shelters, and live with minimal supplies. Jane doesn't just talk about nature, she listens, Taylor-Joy explained. She's proof that compassion is another kind of strength. On set, she developed an almost meditative stillness. During emotional scenes, she would simply stand among the trees, letting the soundscape dictate her performance. Mangold encouraged this improvisation, saying, Anya understands that silence can tell an entire story. Her chemistry with Skarsgård grew not from rehearsed lines but from shared endurance days spent drenched in rain, coated in ash, surrounded by real animals. The authenticity between them became the film's heartbeat. The madness of Bardem. Javier Bardem's transformation into Bardem was a masterclass in psychological depth. The actor approached the character as a man at war with the unknown. Bardem is terrified of chaos, Bardem said. He hides that fear behind ambition. But in the jungle, everything he believes collapses. To embody that breakdown, Bardem isolated himself from the cast between takes, keeping to a tent lit only by lanterns. His voice deepened, his posture grew heavier as filming progressed. By the final scenes, his exhaustion was real, a mirror of his character's unraveling. Mangold recalled, there's a moment where Bardem looks at Tarzan, drenched in rain, and you can see the exact instant his arrogance dies. That wasn't acting. That was a man realizing nature doesn't negotiate. The sound of survival. Composer Hans Zimmer built the score from field recordings captured on set, insect calls, rustling leaves, the rhythmic drumming of rain on bark. These organic sounds became musical notes. Zimmer explained, Tarzan's world doesn't need violins, it already has them, they're just disguised as wind and water. He layered human voices into the percussion, turning breath itself into rhythm. When Tarzan runs through the jungle, the soundtrack subtly matches his pulse, the audience can feel the oxygen moving. The result is an auditory experience that blurs the line between soundtrack and atmosphere. Editing the Earth. Mangold and editor Michael McCusker spent almost 10 months shaping the film's final cut. They removed exposition, trusting imagery to speak. Long stretches unfold without dialogue, yet the story never loses clarity. One sequence, Tarzan kneeling beside a dying gorilla, lasts nearly 3 minutes with no music. Only breathing and rain. McCusker said, silence can be violent. It forces you to confront what you'd rather ignore. The editing rhythm mimics a heartbeat, slow and meditative at first, accelerating toward the climax, then fading into stillness, a cinematic reflection of life's cycle. Critical echoes. When Tarzan 2026 premiered at the Venice Film Festival, the audience reportedly sat in stunned quiet for nearly a full minute before applause began. Early reviews hailed it as Mangold's most spiritual work, comparing its tone to Apocalypse Now and The Revenant. Critics praised its courage to be contemplative in a blockbuster era obsessed with velocity. Variety called it a primal poem about connection. The Guardian described it as a feral elegy for the planet we keep forgetting we share. Environmental organizations embraced the film's message. Proceeds from promotional campaigns were donated to reforestation projects in Africa and Asia, reinforcing the production's real-world impact. A mirror for the modern world. Beyond cinema, Tarzan 2026 struck a chord with a generation anxious about ecological collapse. Teachers used its themes in classrooms to discuss empathy and environmental ethics. Psychologists referenced it as a metaphor for reconnection not with wilderness alone, but with emotional authenticity. Tarzan's dual identity, human yet animal, mirrors society's own confusion between progress and preservation. Mangold's film suggests that healing may come not from more technology, but from remembering what simplicity feels like. In one of the film's closing voiceovers, Jane writes in her journal. We keep asking what separates us from the wild. Maybe the better question is what still connects us. That single line, delivered in Taylor-Joy's whisper, lingers long after the credits fade. The legacy of a roar. The production of Tarzan 2026 has already inspired discussions of sequels and spin-offs, but Mangold resists the idea. This story isn't about continuation, he said. It's about remembrance. Nevertheless, the film's success has reignited interest in literary adaptations that respect nature as character, not backdrop. Streaming platforms and studios began revisiting similar classics: The Jungle Book, Mowgli, White Fang, with newfound respect for authenticity over artifice. Even Alexander Skarsgård admitted he may never play Tarzan again. You can't return to the jungle twice, he said quietly during the Wrap interview. Once it accepts you, it keeps a piece of you forever. The symbol of the wild. At its deepest level, Tarzan 2026 isn't just about one man. It's a story of evolution, emotional, spiritual, planetary. The jungle stands for everything untamed within us: compassion, instinct, wonder, and fear. Civilization tries to silence those voices, but the film insists they still whisper beneath the noise of our cities. Mangold summarizes it best: Tarzan isn't an escape from humanity. He's a reminder of what it once meant to be human. As the final shot fades, Tarzan standing beneath a rising sun, arms open, birds spiraling overhead, the camera lingers just long enough to blur his silhouette with the landscape. Man and jungle become indistinguishable. It's not just an ending, it's an invitation. The screen cuts to black. Zimmer's final note hums like breath. And somewhere, in the distance, a roar echoes, not of anger, but of awakening. Epilogue: The Eternal Echo. Months after release, fans began sharing a phrase online: "Number the jungle remembers." It became more than a marketing slogan, it became a quiet movement. People posted photos of forests, oceans, and mountains with the tagline, "Celebrating the wild spaces that still exist." Schools planted trees in the film's name. Art students painted murals of Tarzan surrounded by animals, not as subjects, but as equals. Mangold responded with a single message on social media: "If one story can make you look at the world with softer eyes, it was worth telling." And perhaps that is the true legacy of Tarzan 2026, a film that doesn't end when the credits roll. It lingers, reminding us that every rustle of wind, every drop of rain, every heartbeat, human or otherwise, belongs to the same endless rhythm. The jungle, after all, never forgets. It listens. It waits. It remembers. The story begins in the heart of a changing world, a world that once pulsed with the rhythm of the jungle, but now trembles beneath the weight of human greed. The trees that once whispered secrets of life now stand silent, scarred by machines that chew through their roots. The rivers that once carried the laughter of animals now choke with oil and ash. And amid this destruction, there is one man, a man who was once part of the wild, who ran with beasts, who understood the heartbeat of the land better than the language of men. His name is Tarzan. The Return. After years of living among civilization, Tarzan's eyes have lost the wild gleam they once had. He now walks the streets of London, dressed like a man but haunted by the ghost of the jungle. He sits in crowded rooms filled with voices and light, but his mind is far away, deep in the forest, where every sound told a story and every shadow had a soul. Against the advice of his peers, Tarzan decides to return to Africa, the land that gave him life, the land that made him who he is. Jane, loyal and brave, stands beside him. She knows this journey is not just about going back, it's about facing what was lost. They step off the plane into the heavy heat of the savannah. The air smells of dust, oil, and smoke. The jungle that once welcomed Tarzan now feels wounded. The trees, once alive with song, are marked with red paint and numbers. The sound of chainsaws echoes in the distance. Animals that once bowed their heads in greeting now scatter in fear. The land remembers him, but it also remembers betrayal. Tarzan walks through the forest with quiet steps. His fingers brush the bark of trees he climbed as a boy. His heart aches at every cut, every scar left by man's hunger. He whispers, "You are still here." And the wind seems to answer, barely, as if the jungle itself is too tired to speak. The corporate war. The land that once belonged to the wild now belongs to corporations, faceless empires driven by greed. Their machines tear through forests, building roads where vines once grew, draining rivers that once gave life. Tarzan watches in silence, anger burning inside him. At the head of this destruction stands William Hargrove, a man of steel and profit, the CEO of a global energy corporation. He calls it progress. He tells the world he's bringing jobs and growth to Africa. But what he's really building is a kingdom of fire and metal, and the jungle pays the price. Tarzan confronts him. "You call this progress?" he asks. Hargrove smiles. "It's survival, Mr. Clayton. Nature had its time. Now it's ours." Tarzan clenches his fists. He remembers the cries of elephants, the silence of fallen trees, the rivers turned black. He knows this is no longer just a battle for the jungle, it's a war for the soul of the earth. The jungle speaks. That night, Tarzan and Jane make camp near the edge of what was once his home. The moonlight filters through the broken canopy, and the sounds of distant engines hum like an approaching storm. Tarzan lies awake, listening. He hears whispers, faint, familiar, ancient. The jungle is speaking to him. The voice of his childhood, the rustle of leaves, the call of wolves, the heartbeat of the earth, it all comes alive again. He dreams of Kala, his ape mother, her arms strong, her voice gentle. He sees the old tribe, the creatures that raised him, the friends he lost. And when he wakes, the dream still lingers like mist. Jane sees the look in his eyes. "You heard them, didn't you?" she asks softly. Tarzan nods. "They're crying for help. The resistance. Not all hope is lost." Deep within the forest, a group of rebels has formed, locals who refuse to let their land die. Among them is Amini, a fierce woman who leads the fight with courage and conviction. She remembers Tarzan, the man who once ruled the wild without fear. When Tarzan meets her, there's both recognition and pain. "You left us," Amini says. "You went to live with them." "I thought I could change them," Tarzan replies. "But I was wrong." Amini nods. "Then help us now." The two join forces. Tarzan teaches them how to move like the forest, to use shadows as weapons, silence as strength. He shows them how to listen to the land, how to fight not with rage, but with understanding. Every night, they strike back, sabotaging machines, freeing captured animals, burning the blueprints of destruction. For every tree that falls, they plant two more in secret. For every road built, they block another path. The jungle begins to breathe again. Its pulse grows stronger. Its voice, louder. The man becomes the legend again. As days pass, Tarzan transforms. The man of civilization begins to fade, replaced once more by the wild spirit of the jungle. He sheds the weight of cities, the noise of men, and becomes what he was born to be, the protector of balance. He runs barefoot through the forest, moving like wind through branches. Animals sense him, lions pause mid-hunt, birds fly beside him, elephants raise their trunks in respect. The jungle remembers its king. Jane watches him from afar, her heart full of pride and fear. She knows he is slipping away back into the world that claimed him first. One night, she says quietly, "You're becoming him again." Tarzan looks at her, eyes glowing in the firelight. "I never stopped being him," he replies. The price of peace. Days turn into weeks. The struggle for the jungle grows fierce. Each morning, smoke rises higher above the treetops, a black cloud that eats the sky. The corporations grow impatient. For every machine destroyed, they send 10 more. For every tree spared, 100 are marked for death. Tarzan and Amini lead the resistance from the shadows. Their people fight not for money or power, but for something greater, for the right to breathe, for the right to exist. Jane documents everything, every battle, every fallen tree, every act of courage. Her camera becomes her weapon. The world must see what's happening here, the truth no one wants to face. But truth, like the jungle, comes with a price. One night, while Tarzan and his allies attack a fuel convoy, the corporation retaliates. They burn a nearby village to the ground. The screams echo through the forest. By the time Tarzan arrives, the fire has consumed everything. Bodies lie among the ashes. The river runs red. Tarzan falls to his knees. The heat of the fire burns his skin, but the pain inside burns deeper. Jane reaches for him, tears in her eyes. "We can't fight them like this," she whispers. Tarzan's voice is low. "Then we fight smarter." He looks toward the horizon where the machines still roar, and the night swallows his rage. The hunter returns. William Hargrove, now desperate, hires someone who knows the jungle, a man who once hunted Tarzan himself. Captain Mercer, an ex-military tracker, scarred and ruthless, arrives with a team of mercenaries. His orders: bring Tarzan in dead or alive. Mercer knows the jungle. But the jungle knows Tarzan. The hunt begins. Traps are set. Helicopters sweep the skies. Explosives tear through the undergrowth. The animals flee deeper into hiding. The balance of the wild trembles. Tarzan moves silently, watching from the trees. He knows this fight is different, not just against machines, but against men who understand how to kill. He whispers to the jungle, to the wind, to the spirits of his past. "Guide me." That night, the rain falls heavy. Mercer's men stumble through mud and fog, flashlights flickering. Suddenly, one disappears, dragged into the dark by unseen hands. Another falls to the ground, tangled in vines that seem to move on their own. And then Tarzan strikes. He moves like a shadow, fast, precise, unstoppable. The sound of his roar cuts through the storm, deep, primal, and full of fury. For the first time, Mercer's men feel fear, not of death, but of something older, something untamed. By dawn, only Mercer remains. He limps through the clearing, blood on his hands, eyes wide with disbelief. Tarzan steps from the mist, covered in mud and rain. "You can't stop progress," Mercer growls. Tarzan looks at him, calm, fierce, human and beast all at once. "I'm not stopping it," he says. "I'm reminding it where it began." He lets Mercer live a message to Hargrove. The jungle is not his to claim. Betrayal. Back at camp, the rebels celebrate their small victories. But Jane senses something wrong. She's noticed strange transmissions, secret meetings, whispers among the new recruits. And one night, the truth cuts deep. Someone among them is a spy. The traitor is revealed: Rafik, a young man who had once sworn loyalty to Amini. He had been feeding information to Hargrove's men in exchange for money and a promise of safety for his family. But the corporations lied: his family was already gone. Tarzan looks at him with fury and pity. "You traded your home for a lie," he says quietly. Rafik falls to his knees. "I thought I could save them." "There's no saving what you've already sold," Tarzan replies. Amini turns away in tears. The jungle grows silent again. The final stand. The next morning, the corporations launch their full assault. Helicopters thunder across the horizon. Dozens of trucks roll in with armed soldiers. The jungle shakes under the weight of machines. Tarzan, Amini, and the resistance take their positions. The animals sense what's coming: the elephants gather, the apes climb high into the canopy, the birds circle above. It's as if the entire jungle has chosen its side. The battle begins. Explosions tear through the trees. Fire spreads like disease. But the jungle fights back: vines crush vehicles, mud traps soldiers, and animals strike from the shadows. Tarzan leads the charge. He swings from the trees, his cry echoing through smoke and chaos. He moves through bullets and flames, guided not by rage but by purpose. At the heart of the battlefield stands Hargrove, protected by soldiers, shouting orders into his radio. Tarzan lands before him bare-chested, bloodied, eyes burning with the spirit of the wild. Hargrove raises his gun. "You're fighting a losing battle," he sneers. Tarzan steps closer. "You already lost the moment you forgot you were part of this world." Lightning flashes. The rain begins to pour. In that storm, man and nature collide, metal against muscle, greed against instinct. The fight is brutal. Tarzan disarms Hargrove, their struggle crashing into the mud. Hargrove reaches for his fallen pistol, but the ground beneath him splits as the earth itself gives way. The jungle reclaims him. Silence follows. The rain washes away the fire. After the storm, when the sun rises, the jungle breathes again. Smoke still lingers, but the machines have gone quiet. The air smells of rain, soil, and rebirth. Amani stands beside Tarzan, her face streaked with dirt and tears. "You did it," she says. Tarzan shakes his head. "No. We did." Jane walks toward him, her camera hanging by her side. She looks around at the land, broken, but alive. Her voice trembles. "What happens now?" Tarzan looks to the horizon where the first light touches the trees. "Now," he says softly, "the jungle heals." He steps forward, placing his hand on the trunk of an ancient tree, one of the few still standing. Beneath his fingers, he feels the faint thrum of life returning. The legend reborn. Weeks later, the world begins to hear the truth. Jane's footage spreads across news networks and social media. People see what was done and what was saved. Protests rise in cities. Corporations are forced to retreat. For the first time in decades, the jungle wins a battle. But Tarzan doesn't stay for the victory. He disappears into the wilderness once more, walking barefoot through the soil that raised him. The jungle welcomes him home. Amani watches from afar as he fades into the green. She smiles faintly. "The spirit of the jungle lives," she whispers. And somewhere deep within that living forest, the sound of a roar echoes, powerful, ancient, free. The jungle answers in return. Epilogue: The heart of the wild. Years later, travelers passing through the Congo tell stories. Stories of a man who moves with the wind, who speaks to animals, who guards the forest with unseen eyes. They call him many names: the ghost of the green, the lord of the wild, the one who never left. But the jungle knows his true name. It whispers it every dawn, through the rustling of leaves and the song of rivers. Tarzan. Because when the jungle speaks, it speaks through him. Its roar is his voice. Its heart beats with his own. And as long as the world remembers, the jungle will never fall silent again.